I was also thinking about something that you spoke about once in a training that I was in, where you said you were noticing when you were teaching in trainings that people would always do lessons with their eyes closed.
Yes, yes, yes.
And you did some experiments with the eyes open. Can you share a little bit about that and your thinking about
Oh, sure.
it?
So I started to notice in the Feldenkrais world, my idea was in the Feldenkrais world, the thinking is, how do you find your habits? Now, we're creatures of habit, and the idea is the habit useful for you or not? If it's not, how do you find out if it's for useful? You have to do something unhabitual to notice it. And then once you notice it, is it useful for you now? Is it not? And can you change it if you want? That's a basis, one of the aspects. So if this is part of your thinking, you'll see that any system that you go into will tend to have its habits that it will form. This is a natural part of it. But if you don't sort of expose the habits or somehow make people aware or mindful of the habits, then they have no way to say, is it good for them or not? So something I did notice was that whenever I would come into class and I'd say, lie on your back, bang, people would close their eyes. And then I started to think, well, is it needed? Is it not needed? Should it be done? Should it not be done? Is it done for specific reasons or not? And then people immediately, I would say, leave your eyes open. And then the people, 2 seconds, they'd leave their eyes and they close them. Then some people get upset and say, no, I want to close my eyes. People would say, I need to separate from the outside world. I also noticed as things that in training programs in the Feldenkrais world, that if lessons, particularly the initial stages of the training, if there was lessons that were taught of awareness through movement, too long, 50 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes, whatever, a 15-minute break and then another, at a certain point in time, some people would sort of get into very strange emotional states. They would sort of become destabilized in how they were. Others became wonderful. They could go into their own space. And I started to think, well, people, if you're asking them, and many people would say, close your eyes when you lie down, or leave them with their eyes closed, that this whole domain of trauma is a disassociated state, okay, that you get very internal and you become nonverbal. It's a nonverbal state. So I started to notice for some people, if they stay too long in a nonverbal internal sensory domain with their eyes closed, they actually can become destabilized, re-traumatized, and it's better to let them remain with their eyes open because some people need to keep fixated outside. So I would do shorter lessons, shorter periods of time, and I would notice this would disappear for most people. The second thing was in the Feldenkrais domain, the whole idea of eyes open and eyes closed, you'll never see if you discuss Alexander and I. Very rarely does Dr. Feldenkrais tell you what to do with your eyes, unless something very specific, close your eyes. Otherwise, he doesn't say it. So you have to think, well, should it be open or should it not? Well, the eyes have a very specific function related to anti-gravity musculature. So if you want to do something that will help reduce the tonus in the neck, besides just lying on the back, having the eyes closed is useful. Having the eyes open, right, is, and wanting to do something with the eyes, better to close the eyes, otherwise you track, then the eyes always go one, and it does. If you want to follow things with the eyes open or eyes closed, you'll find that the imagination is very different than if you're looking at something or you imagine looking at something. So there's many very, very important uses. How you use the eyes. Do you use the eyes? Can you do it one way? Can you do it with the other way? Now, I'll give you another example. So many people meditate. Do you ever meditate?
Uh-huh.
Most people in the Western world these days have either tried meditation or regularly meditate. I regularly meditate. And sometimes I listen to people and have guided meditations and whatnot. But before I was doing that, and when I was experimenting with myself before the meditation with my eyes, what I started to notice was at the beginning, it was difficult for me to keep the eyes open. I wanted to try to find the sensations through my eyes being closed. I thought I had a better contact with myself with my eyes closed. And then I started to notice, well, what is my visual field? Where is my visual field? And I started playing certain games with myself, you could say, and I would just sort of imagine the outside world as a screen. And it wasn't, and the minute I would do that, it's not that you defocus, but you defocus the meaning. And the moment I would do that, I would notice there's no difference between eyes open and eyes closed. It's just how I'm mindful and observant and attentive to what my eyes are doing. And then it was very interesting with one of the people that I was following for a while in meditation. They were discussing the same thing. Let's work with eyes open, because there's eyes open philosophy and eyes closed philosophy, and some do both. And then they would talk about the visual field and taking in and widening, and just or the hearing field and the depth of what you hear. So it's a deep topic. It's an interesting topic. It's complex, but it's important to point out. Otherwise, it's just not thought of, and people close. But once people become clear and are given the choice, man, they do whatever they want once they know it. When you know what you're doing, do what you want.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between physical stability and emotional stability?
No.
No.
No. This is, emotions are. I don't know. What does it mean I would ask you, what do you mean by emotional stability? I think me, if I would think of emotional stability for myself as a 62-year-old adult, uh, I would say I to think of myself being emotionally stable means that I'm able to manage an extraordinary wide range of emotional situations, and that when sadness, grief, frustration, the difficult side of things come along, it doesn't throw me out of life. I know it's part of life, and I know that I'm safe in the world and the people around me to allow myself to have it, because it's part of my response to either my perception of what's outside of me or a reality, a loss of a loved one, an illness that you take with yourself, an experience that you see that's very difficult to watch your child be in, the health of a child, or education, or difficulties. So, and being able to manage it and not stir you to such a way that it throws you out of your bounds, that you need help to regulate yourself back. So either you regulate yourself with those around you by expressing it, or you're able to self-regulate it. But it's not about stable holding on to not feeling. So, and then of course, on the positive side, it's, nobody thinks about positive stability and emotion. You're too, exhilarated. You're too, what's his name? But that's how I sort of think about it. That you need to be able to feel yourself, and stability for me has to do more with self-regulation and allowing yourself to have that interactive force with yourself. So I see that in my work with children quite a lot, because when you work with special needs children, one of the domains very much that you see with the child is emotional states, only expressive of certain emotional states and others not. And when you see the children begin to grow and develop, you'll see that they're able to tolerate and become more like typical children, who during a day you'll observe them going back and forth between God knows how many emotions, that they can go into a place that's not okay for them, so to say. And with a typical child, you can shift their attention very quickly, or you give them something comforting and they return. They don't go and off for with special needs children at the beginning. Many times you see it takes them a long time to sort of recover themselves back, or the range of emotion is very small. When you see them start to grow and develop, you usually see a sort of bubblegum type effect that gets stretched in many different ways. Just like you would have when you do, many people report this in Feldenkrais, when they sense themselves and feel themselves and move more, they're more open in also their emotional world to reacting.
And what's the difference between stability and strength? Can you say a little bit about that?
Sure, you have, look, I can be stable, but not strong enough to lift things, So that depends. I can be stable when I ski down a mountain, but I might not have enough strength to do it or stamina to do it for 6 hours, right? So I can stay stable and go where I want. Being unstable means I can move where I want and how I want in a way that I can do what I want, right? That's a part of stability. If you're unstable, you don't manage it. So, but this is a bigger topic because then you talk about structural instability or structural stability. So strength is something that you have to build up so that you can have more stamina. So it has to do with muscular strength is one way, coupled with stability in the skeleton. This is what I would say. But at the same time, you need to be able to be unstable to get more stability. They always go one and the other.